stuff, folks. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about technique versus weight lifted. Which is more important? Now, the reason I'm having this discussion is because one of our VIP clients actually asked me the question the other day, because she saw on Instagram a female fitness influencer. I say influencer, she was a bodybuilder. She was a professional bodybuilder, IFBB athlete, so a female bodybuilder. This lady said on one of her posts, your body does not know how much weight it is lifting. The only thing that matters is the amount of tension you put the muscle under. Now, that in itself, that statement is contradictory, because part of tension is load, okay? That's part and parcel of the definition of tension, essentially. So what we did is I went and had a look at this lady's profile, and despite saying that weight doesn't matter, the first video I came across, she was hip thrusting like 200 kilos, okay? Big girl, very, very strong, professional athlete, hip thrusting 200 kilos. So that in itself suggests that the way she trains contradicts her statement. Weight does matter. Now, there is a balance between the two, and this is what you're going to need to do. Ultimately, progressive overload and the ability to lift more over time is extremely important, and that is going to be an enormous factor in your results and in the speed of your progression. If you are trying to get stronger, if you are trying to perform better, if you are trying to lift heavier over time, that is how you continually progress, and you will end up with the best possible physique for you. Now, that only comes after you have learned how to lift well. What always comes first is you learn your form and technique. You learn full range of motion. This means taking the joints, the appropriate joints within any given movement, through their full range of motion. If we are doing a squat, for example, we want to be getting our butt as close to our ankles as possible without losing integrity through the back and hips. If we are doing a bench press, we want to make sure that that bar is coming as close to, if not onto the chest as possible. If we are doing a pull-up, we want to make sure that we come down and we stretch out as far as the lats can possibly go. That is full range of motion. So the first thing we do when we're learning how to lift is we learn to lift properly with great technique and perfect form. Every single one of you out there has the video library. You have the exercises attached to each program within the app, so you know exactly how you should be lifting. Obviously, it's your responsibility to do so. Now, once you have got your form nailed, once you've got your technique good, you've got your range of motion, that's when we say, right, I'm now safe, I'm structurally sound, we're going to start progressing. And then weight is very, very important. You need to constantly be trying to build up the weight. You need to constantly be trying to lift heavier over time. That's not always going to happen every single session. Some movements you'll get stronger session by session to a point. Other movements, it could take you 2 months to put on a significant amount of weight versus that movement. For example, things like lateral raises, small movements, tiny little muscles. They are going to progress way slower than, say, a deadlift, where you're using your glutes, your hamstrings, your back, your shoulders, etc. Or, for example, if we take males versus females. Females generally are going to progress much slower on their upper body than they will on a male's upper body. So there are definitely differences with that. But once you've got your technique nailed, you must be trying to lift heavier session by session, week by week, month by month, whatever it may be. If you're not, you are cutting yourself out of results. Now, the only time that you don't want to be lifting heavier is if you start to lose your form. We want to keep our form technically perfect, or as close to technically perfect as possible, whilst progressing. So if for the sake of lifting more weight, you start lifting with shit form, you've gone a bit too far, you need to come back and be patient with yourself on that progression. But if you are lifting absolutely perfectly all the time and you haven't moved past a weight for months, it's probably because you're not trying to train hard enough. You're not pushing it. You're not going in with enough intensity and that intent to lift more and progress. So, in short, in summary, tension is absolutely important. Lifting with the right tempo, lifting with full range of motion, moving the joints as far as they can move. Absolutely very, very important. But so is lifting heavy. So every single set you do, you should be lifting as heavy as you can for the reps set. Obviously, the more repetitions you have in a set, you're not going to be able to lift as much weight. That's totally normal, so each program is going to be slightly different. The lower the repetitions in a set, the more weight you should be lifting. So you will see with each program change, you're going to need to reassess your weights in that first week, figure out where you're lifting now, and then try to push forwards from there. Make sense? So we lift with perfect form, and we keep that perfect form. Then we really try to progress. We're always trying to lift heavier, always. The only time we don't do that is if our form starts to go to shit and then we back off a little bit, remind ourselves how to lift better, and progress. Now, if you can't progress, we have two options. Number one is to add an additional rep. If you can add an additional rep, that's awesome, that's great. Number two would be to add a little bit more weight. Either one of them is absolutely fine. Even if it says hit 12 reps, you hit 12 reps relatively easily, but you can't jump to the next weight because maybe in your gym it's 2.5 kilos heavier per dumbbell. Some gyms are like that. If that is the case, add an extra rep, add an extra rep, add an extra rep. Because by the time, if you're set for 12 reps, but you can get 15, I can guarantee you can lift the next weight. For sure, for sure, for sure, for sure, for sure. Don't let it intimidate you. Okay, so lift with perfect form, then learn to lift heavy. Always push to progress. The only time you back off is when you start to lose your form. Hopefully that helps.